royal family stands at a crossroads, its foundations trembling under the weight of uncertainty. The world watches as a king fights battles on two fronts, one against the disease that grips his body and another against the shifting tides of public opinion. King Charles III, once the long-waiting heir to the throne, now finds himself on unstable ground. His reign, barely in its infancy, is already overshadowed by doubt, by whispers of discontent, and by a force even greater than tradition change. The murmurs of a monarchy in crisis grow louder with every passing day. A king weakened by illness, a public that remains unconvinced, and a prince who, whether he admits it or not, is slowly stepping into the void. Prince William, the man who will one day wear the crown, has begun to take center stage not by force, but by necessity. In the absence of certainty, the people search for stability, for a leader who embodies the future rather than the past, and for many that figure is no longer Charles, it is his son. The numbers tell a brutal story. Among the younger generation, Charles struggles to connect. His approval ratings remain fragile, failing to command the same admiration that once defined his mother's reign. A mere 33% of 18 to 24-year-olds view him positively, a devastating contrast to the unwavering support once granted to Queen Elizabeth II. But William? William represents something different. To many, he is the fresh face of a modern monarchy, a symbol of evolution rather than endurance. His wife Catherine is even more beloved, holding the highest favorability rating among the royals. Together, they paint a picture of renewal, while Charles, ill, burdened and fighting battles he may not win, finds himself fading from view. But this is not just a fight for public approval. This is a fight for legacy. A king cannot rule if his people do not believe in him. A throne means nothing if its occupant does not hold power, not in title but in presence. As Charles faces the harsh reality of dwindling faith, the question becomes impossible to ignore. Has his reign already begun its descent before it has truly begun? The weight of a lifetime spent waiting has been replaced by the crushing realization that time is no longer on his side. The illness that grips him has altered everything, forcing conversations once considered unthinkable. Behind closed doors, within the walls of Buckingham Palace, discussions of succession have begun. They are quiet, careful, but they exist. Because as Charles fights for his health, a new reality is taking shape. The monarchy, an institution built on stability, is bracing for change. And the whispers of succession? They are growing louder. The numbers don't lie, the people have spoken, and it's not looking good for King Charles. For a man who waited a lifetime to ascend the throne, his reign has been anything but triumphant. The crown may rest upon his head, but it does not rest easily. The weight of expectation, the burden of comparison, and the harsh reality of public opinion have created a storm that threatens to overshadow his rule. Because while Charles sits on the throne, it is William who stands in the hearts of the people. Approval ratings paint a stark and unforgiving picture. Among working-age Britons, Charles holds a net approval of just +17, a number that, while positive, lacks the strength needed to secure unwavering loyalty. Among younger generations, the outlook is even bleaker. The future of the monarchy depends on its ability to connect with the next era of Britain, yet Charles finds himself struggling to make an impression. For the 18 to 24-year-olds, the generation shaping modern Britain, his net approval is in the negative. 50% view him unfavorably, a devastating blow to a king who should, in theory, be leading a nation with confidence. But confidence is not what the people see. They see a man out of step with the world around him, a relic of tradition in an age demanding transformation. And then there is William. The contrast is impossible to ignore. Where Charles struggles to command admiration, William thrives. His popularity is not just stable, it is soaring. A prince who was once defined by his mother's shadow has now stepped fully into his own. A man who, with his wife by his side, has become the very image of the modern monarchy. And if Charles is fading, Catherine is rising. More than a queen in waiting, she is the crown jewel of the royal family's public appeal. Loved by 74% of the British people, her influence extends far beyond ceremonial duties. She is the royal the public believes in, the woman who gives William an even stronger foothold in the hearts of the nation. Royal experts whisper of what this all means, and the conclusion is clear. Charles's struggle to connect with the public is not just a temporary setback. It is a sign of something greater, something far more dangerous for a king who cannot afford uncertainty. The monarchy survives not just on titles, but on loyalty, on belief. And as William's vision for the future becomes more appealing, the transition of power may not be a distant event. It may be closer than anyone dares to admit, and as Charles's approval drops, William quietly builds his vision for the monarchy. It started as subtle, a speech here, an event there, a quiet shift that many overlooked at first. But as the dust settled after Queen Elizabeth II's passing, one thing became clear. Prince William was no longer just the future of the monarchy. He was its present. With every engagement and every carefully placed initiative, William stepped further into the role that many now believe he was always meant to hold. He did not demand the spotlight, he did not seek to overshadow his father. But the power vacuum left in the wake of Elizabeth's reign demanded a leader, and William was ready to answer that call. His approach was deliberate and precise, a stark contrast to the grandeur and tradition that once defined the monarchy. William's vision was not one of excess, not one of gold-trimmed ceremonies and endless formality. It was something else entirely, something leaner, sharper, and more attuned to the world outside palace walls. In the months that followed his grandmother's passing, William's actions spoke louder than words. He trimmed down the unnecessary. He refocused the royal family's role. Where Charles upheld tradition, William sought transformation. His message resonated. Young Britons, disillusioned with the monarchy's relevance in modern times, found in William something they could connect with. He was not a distant ruler. He was a figure who spoke their language and engaged with causes that mattered. His philanthropic efforts did not just exist in name, they were hands-on, tangible, and reflective of a generation that values action over ceremony. And for a monarchy that has long struggled to evolve with the times, William's approach felt like the breath of fresh air it so desperately needed. But it wasn't just the public taking notice. Inside the walls of Buckingham Palace, the shift was being felt. The monarchy has always been built on hierarchy, but power is not dictated by birthright alone. It is earned. And William was earning it in real time, whether Charles was ready to accept it or not. His father's reign had begun, but already, the conversation had moved past him. The world wasn't asking what kind of King Charles would be, it was asking how soon William would take his place. But while William builds a future, Charles is struggling with a battle far more personal. The most powerful man in Britain is hiding a secret that could change the monarchy forever. Behind the grand halls of Buckingham Palace, behind the carefully crafted smiles and public engagements, King Charles III is facing the most personal battle of his life. A battle that even a crown cannot protect him from. His recent cancer diagnosis sent shockwaves through the monarchy, an institution that thrives on stability and continuity. But now, that stability is crumbling. The future of the royal family has never felt more uncertain. At first, the palace did what it always does, controlled the narrative, carefully worded statements, reassuring messages, and insistence that the king remains committed to his duties. But the cracks in the facade were impossible to ignore. The details were scarce, too scarce, fueling speculation that the truth was far worse than the public was being told. Royal insiders whispered of quiet meetings, of contingency plans being drawn up behind closed doors. The monarchy has always been built on preparation, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The king is ill, and the whispers of succession are growing louder. The rumors only gain traction as reports emerge suggesting that Charles's prognosis may not be as optimistic as the palace wants the world to believe. Some sources claim the king may have only a year to live. A shocking possibility that, if true, could change the course of the monarchy forever. Queen Camilla, his steadfast companion, is said to be struggling with the emotional toll of it all. Those closest to her describe a woman torn between duty and devastation, knowing that the man she loves may not have much time left. The weight of the situation extends beyond personal grief. This is not just about Charles, this is about the entire institution of the monarchy. For centuries, the British crown has withstood wars, scandals, and betrayals. But illness is different. It does not negotiate, it does not wait. And as the king's condition remains shrouded in secrecy, one truth becomes undeniable. The world is watching, the government is watching, and so are world leaders, quietly assessing what a post-Charles Britain could look like. With Charles's health uncertain, world leaders are beginning to take notice. A royal meeting that shook the world, a decision that angered a superpower, and a king caught in the middle. When King Charles III met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, it was more than a diplomatic gesture. It was a statement, a declaration of where Britain stood in one of the most divisive conflicts of modern times. But in the shadow of that handshake, another figure watched. Another leader did not take kindly to being upstaged. Donald Trump, the former US president, had been extending his influence on the global stage, carefully maneuvering alliances and positioning himself as the dominant voice in Ukraine. And then, in a single meeting, Charles had altered the narrative. The fallout was immediate. What should have been a routine diplomatic encounter turned into an international controversy. In Washington, murmurs of dissatisfaction grew louder. Sources within Trump's circle claimed he felt slighted, as if Britain had deliberately chosen a side without consulting its closest ally. The tension was undeniable. The United States and the United Kingdom, nations bound by history, war, and diplomacy, suddenly found themselves in an uneasy silence. And at the center of it all was a king who, unlike his mother, was no stranger to controversy. For decades, Queen Elizabeth II had upheld a sacred principle: royalty does not interfere in politics. She was a figure of unity, a beacon of stability in an ever-changing world. But Charles was different. He had never been one to remain silent. Whether it was climate change, architecture, or global conflicts, he had always had opinions. And now, with the weight of the crown upon his head, he was no longer just a man with opinions. He was a king whose words had consequence. To some, his actions were bold and necessary, a sign that the monarchy was evolving, stepping into a more active role in global affairs. To others, it was reckless, dangerous, a break from tradition that risked turning a centuries-old institution into a political tool. The monarchy was meant to unite, not divide. It was meant to rise above the shifting sands of politics, not sink into them. And yet, Charles had made his choice. As Britain's allies re-evaluated their positions and tensions simmered beneath the surface, one thing became clear: this was not just about diplomacy. It was about the future of the monarchy itself. Because as Charles navigates global diplomacy, the real battle is unfolding within Buckingham Palace. Is Britain preparing for a new king sooner than expected? The whispers have turned into open speculation. Behind the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, behind the carefully managed public statements, one truth looms over the monarchy: King Charles III is running out of time. His reign, once envisioned as a steady continuation of tradition, is now marked by uncertainty. His health is failing, his approval is fragile, and the once unthinkable question is now at the forefront of royal discussions: will Charles abdicate? For centuries, abdication has been a forbidden word in the halls of British royalty, a stain left behind by King Edward VIII, whose decision to relinquish the throne for love nearly shattered the monarchy. But times have changed, and so has the nature of power. The British public is no longer willing to wait for leadership to adapt. They demand change. They demand a monarchy that represents them, not one that clings to the past. And in Prince William, they see the leader they are waiting for. Speculation is no longer contained to tabloids or idle gossip. Political insiders, royal experts, and even those within the palace walls are acknowledging the possibility Charles may not rule for decades as his mother did. He may not even rule for years. If the king's health continues to decline, an early transition could be inevitable. And if that moment arrives sooner than expected, the monarchy will not be unprepared. The discussions are happening. They are quiet, deliberate, a slow but steady acknowledgement that the weight of the crown may need to shift before the world expects it to. But the palace remains silent. No official word, no confirmation, and yet the actions speak louder than the silence. Prince William is stepping into the light, not as an heir in waiting, but as a king in training. His engagements have taken on greater significance, his presence more commanding. The public has already begun to see him as their future ruler, not in a distant, theoretical sense, but as a reality drawing closer with every passing day. The monarchy is an institution built on continuity, but continuity requires adaptability, and as William's influence grows, it is becoming increasingly clear this transition is not just a matter of tradition, it is a necessity. The weight of the monarchy is shifting, and William is already preparing for his inevitable ascension. And William's transformation isn't just political, it's personal. Once reserved, always diplomatic, but something changed in Prince William. For years he had been the model of restraint, the royal who knew when to speak and when to remain silent. He had watched his family navigate crises, scandals, and tragedies with carefully measured words, always mindful of the weight they carried. But then, everything shifted. 2024 became a year unlike any other, a year that forced William out of the shadows and into the harshest light of all. His father's illness, his wife's health struggles, the mounting pressure of a monarchy in transition. Suddenly, silence was no longer an option. It started subtly, in the way he addressed the public. His words, once cautious and calculated, now carried a deeper weight, a rawness, an urgency. The world saw it in the way he spoke about Princess Catherine, the love of his life and the woman who had been his pillar of strength. When she faced her health battles, William's statements took on an emotional intensity that had never been there before. There was no veil of royal formality, no cold detachment. Instead, there was something deeply human, a husband speaking from the heart, a future king revealing the vulnerability behind the crown. But it wasn't just personal struggles shaping him. The weight of expectation had never been heavier. With Charles's declining health, William was no longer simply preparing for the throne, he was being tested for it in real time. Every decision, every appearance, every word was scrutinized through the lens of inevitability. Would he rise to the occasion? Was he truly ready? Those closest to him insisted the answer was clear. He was not just stepping up, he was transforming before their very eyes. The man once seen as cautious was now a leader in the making, embracing his role with a new level of confidence. Insiders say that this shift is no accident. William has been forced to accept what many have suspected for some time. His father's reign may be shorter than anyone anticipated. The burdens of the monarchy are falling onto his shoulders faster than expected, and he is responding in kind. He is speaking with more conviction, standing taller, preparing, not just in private, but in the public eye. And for those watching, one truth is undeniable. This is not the same Prince William of years past. But if William is the future, what does that mean for Charles's final days as king? Is this the end of King Charles's reign? The question hangs heavy over Britain, unspoken but undeniable. The king, once steadfast in his duty, now finds himself at war with his own body. His every appearance is scrutinized, his every movement analyzed for signs of weakness. And though Buckingham Palace insists he remains committed to his role, the reality behind closed doors tells a different story. His stamina is fading, his energy is not what it once was, and for the first time in modern history, the possibility of a reigning monarch stepping down is no longer just speculation. It is a conversation happening at the highest levels of power. Inside the monarchy's inner circle, contingency plans are quietly taking shape. The official word is firm, there is no talk of abdication, no plans for transition, but behind the veil of royal decorum, preparations are underway. Royal insiders whisper that Charles himself is aware of the growing uncertainty surrounding his reign, that he knows the weight of the crown is growing heavier by the day, and while he has spent his entire life waiting for this moment, he must now ask himself a painful question: how much longer can he endure it? The world has seen it before: monarchs who held on to power until their final breath, leaders who refused to relinquish the throne no matter the cost. But Charles has never been like those who came before him. Unlike his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who ruled with unyielding devotion until the very end, Charles has always been pragmatic, practical. He has spent his life advocating for change, for modernization, and now he must confront a decision that could redefine his legacy. Will Britain witness an abdication, or will Charles defy the odds, holding on to the throne with every last ounce of strength? The answer remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the monarchy is standing at a crossroads. A new era is coming. The only question is, how soon? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.